Sound check, 1, 2, 3. Sound check, 1, 2, 3.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Public Works Committee meeting of June 3rd, 2024. Reminder that all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings. We do have quorum, clerk? We do. I'd like to call the meeting to order then. First thing, ceremonial activities. I'm happy to share that the 17th Annual Children's Water Festival in Hamilton was held last week and was with resounding success. From Tuesday, May 28th to Thursday, May 30th, 2024 at Pier 4 Park. Approximately 2,000 enthusiastic grade 4 students participated in this fantastic event, engaging on a hands-on outdoor learning experience focused on water conservation, technology, science, and the vital importance of protecting our precious water resources. The festival featured a special ceremony where our water resources were honored, and the remarkable accomplishments of the Children's Water Festival were celebrated. It was also an opportunity to recognize the invaluable contributions of our dedicated city staff and community partners, as well as the generous support of our sponsors, including our title sponsor, ArcelorMittal Dofasco. Their generous support ensured that the festival remained free for all students, making this enriching experience accessible to everyone. The event not only provided an exciting and educational experience for our young learners, but also highlighted our community's collective commitment to fostering a sustainable future. The energy and enthusiasm felt throughout the event grounds truly showcased the festival's impact and the joy it brought to our students. Thank you to everyone who made this event possible and contributed to its outstanding success. The Children's Water Festival continues to be a beacon of learning and inspiration for our community. On behalf of committee, I want to thank Director Winters and all the staff that helped with the Water Festival. The mayor, myself, and Councillor Kassar were able to make it out there. It was a great event. The students definitely make it exciting. They bring the energy that we expect our youth to bring. So again, thank you from all the staff and everybody that participated. Moving on to the approval of the agenda. Clerk, any changes to the agenda?
Chair Spatafora, the following changes were made to the agenda. Number 1, ceremonial activities, 17th Annual Children's Water Festival. Number 5, communication items, correspondence from the West End Home Builders Association respecting item 8.1, response to motion for servicing condo boards previously deemed not eligible for municipal waste collection, report PW 24035 citywide, with a recommendation to be received and referred to item 8.1. Delegation requests, 6.2, Brenda Duke, Gibson and Lansdale Area Gallo Community Planning Team, respecting 11.1, maintenance and beautification of Birch Avenue Green Space and Gardens, report number PW 24031 citywide, outstanding business list, that is in person for today's meeting. And number 8, staff presentations, 8.1, response to motion for servicing condo boards previously deemed not eligible for municipal waste collections. The staff presentation was added. There are 2 added notices of motion. 13.1, Strawn Open Space Redevelopment, Ward 2, and 13.2, fencing installation for Gage Park Community Garden located at 1000 Main Street, East Hamilton, Ward 3.
Good thing I asked if there was any changes, Clerk. May I please have a mover and seconder to approve the agenda? Councillor Kassar, Councillor Beattie. Any discussion on the agenda as presented? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote. That carries 12-0. Thank you. Moving on to item 3, any declarations of interest? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 4, approval of the minutes of the May 13th, 2024 meeting. May I please have a mover and second to approve the minutes? Councillor Crutch, Councillor McMeekin. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote. That carries 12-0. Thank you. Moving on to communication items, 5.1. Correspondence from the West End Home Builders Association respecting item 8.1, response to motion for servicing condo boards previously deemed not eligible for municipal waste collection, PW 24035, citywide. This is to be received and referred to 8.1. Any questions from committee? Okay, mover and seconder. Councillor Kassar, Councillor Dan. Good, thank you. And we'll go to the vote, please. Councillor Dan. That vote is up. That carries 12-0. Thank you. Moving on to delegation requests. 6.1, James Kemp, respecting concerns regarding the HSR's front door entry policy for people with disabilities and lack of accessible fare payment options regarding Presto for a future meeting. And then 6.2, Brenda Duke, Gibson and Lansdale area, community planning team, respecting item 11.1, maintenance and beautification of Birch Avenue green space and gardens, PW 24031, citywide, and that one is in person for today's meeting. May I please have a mover and seconder to approve the delegation requests? Councillor Alex Wilson, Councillor Jeff Beattie. Any discussion on the delegations? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote. That carries 11-0. Thank you. Moving on to delegations. Before we get started, members are reminded that questions of the delegations are for clarification purposes only and are not for debate. The delegate will have 5 minutes to speak. You will hear a tone after 4 minutes, and then you'll have an additional minute to finish up. Brenda Duke, please come forward. Hi, Brenda. Just give us, we're just setting up your mic and then we'll let you know when your 5 minutes will start. Thank you. Okay, Brenda, you're all set. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Chair and members of Council, for allowing me to speak today. And as I mentioned, it's in regard to Birch Avenue green space. I've been waiting for the report on the green space since March of 2023, when I delegated to the city for support to maintain gardens. I suggested a budget for additional help or staff to help in the spring to prepare the gardens, not just for Birch Avenue green space, but for all gardens built and cared for by residents. I had been paying $2,000 a year since 2020, and then my health restricted my ability to do the work, and the volunteer base decreased. That resulted in receiving support from the Ward 3 office to match a grant from Hamilton East Kiwanis Homes. I was pleased when I received a site visit from Horticulture in April, and I thought things are moving ahead. They measured the gardens, and we discussed assistance with spring prep. And I was told that would not be possible due to staff shortages, but I could expect to get support for the water service starting in June. At the end of May, I emailed and advised the staff that because of an encampment, it was unsafe for myself or the youth volunteers and students to do any work, and that they didn't need to start watering until the encampment was relocated and we could do some work. At that time, I learned that the understanding and agreements I had been working with from the city since 2015 were no longer valid. We did everything by the book from the very day we started. We adopted the space in 2015 through Adopt a Park. We worked with the city and sought advice from local environmental organizations. We removed invasive species, trimmed existing shrubs and trees, and enhanced the areas that were already established. We followed Hydro One regulations regarding trees and infrastructure additions. The only garden we added was at the south end of the green space as a tribute to a community member, and that was designed and installed by a community landscape and design person. Over the years, hundreds of volunteers have worked in this space, providing plants, mulching, and remediating the soil. Students have earned their volunteer hours and graduated. Clients from the CYO programs have completed their community service, and the immediate and adjoining communities have visited and enjoyed the Birch Avenue green space. Neighbors have come together and children asked to pick a flower for their mom or help in the gardens. It has been instrumental in building a community in our neighborhood. Now it appears there are two choices on the table. The city can enter into a new agreement that allows gardens, or they can choose not to do so based on several factors. I'm told that I cannot do any work on the gardens until that is decided, and they're all overgrown, trampled, or out of control with bindweed and tall grass. Should the city get the new agreement, volunteers will not be allowed to work in the gardens, and horticulture will take them over using their budget. They will be required to follow guidelines set out by Hydro One for where the gardens are located in relation to their infrastructure and gain approval for the species planted in the gardens. I'm reading that currently the existing gardens in Birch Avenue green space do not meet the requirements of Hydro One. And if the recommendations of the report are approved by Hydro One, they will bring the gardens into compliance and remove any plants that aren't approved. I know that none of these gardens are near hydro towers or guidelines, but I don't know why they are not in compliance. I hadn't been told, but today I found a report on what hydro allows as on their species list. Horticulture will just come in and remove whatever they say doesn't belong. Not all of the plants are on that list, but every plant in the garden, from daffodils to irises, supports some species of pollinators during every season. Every tree was planted as far back as 1983 by the city when they converted the space from an abandoned parking lot, and that happened through community. We monitored the tree growth and we notify forestry. We don't always get results or action. The alternative to the first option is no better. If it's too much work or too expensive, they'll just remove all of the gardens and the plants will be relocated. Either way, you're taking away the pride that we all feel. We ask for support for community gardens in general, and instead, we're losing our rights to this community garden. The community and the neighbors, may I finish?
Go ahead, Brenda, just wrap up with your last thing. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. The community and the neighbors are willing to work with the city to do whatever it takes. Would a petition help? Could the community lease the land from Hydro One and provide landscaping and insurance with assistance from the organizations we work with? Could the volunteers sign a liability waiver similar to what we do for cleanup events? If we know what the costs involved are, we can start a process. If support from the city means losing our rights, then that cost is too high. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Just stay there. We have Councillor Nan who has some questions. Councillor Nan?
Through you, Chair, if we could just take a moment. Any chance you need a glass of water, Brenda?
No, I need a Kleenex.
All right, you need a Kleenex. There's a box around here somewhere.
I'm okay, guys.
You okay? All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. And, through you, Chair, I just want to acknowledge, just with sincere, wholehearted gratitude for your nearly 2 decades worth of investment of time, passion, labor, leadership in transforming this derelict space into a green, welcoming one for so many Ward 3 residents and the adjacent neighborhood. And I can appreciate how frustrating it is, having come here to delegate and ask Public Works Committee for support around investing in community gardens in a way that is sustainable, and then seeing a report that might mean you can't do anything going forward. I absolutely can appreciate how frustrating that must feel for you. So I wanted to ask you 2 things. 1, a little bit of historical information, and then 2, going forward. So can you provide us with what you understood as being the requirements from Hydro One when you embarked on the activity of creating the gardens in the first place?
Through the chair, first of all, we did not create the gardens. What we did was we enhanced areas around the plantings that the city had put in 1983. So we may have expanded them or dug them out around the tree line, but
Phone jab,
we
whatever
only...
that, I'll just click that off, okay?
Counselor,
The Hollywood
Counselor
Squares are back.
did we mute him? Yeah. All right. Sorry about that, Brenda. Go ahead.
Okay. As I mentioned, the only garden that we actually dug up ground for was established at the very south end of the space.
And through you, Chair, that South End garden that I know well, what was your understanding of the agreement at that time for that garden to go in?
We did locates to make sure there were no underground wires or anything. Everything that we've done over the years has all passed through Adopt-A-Parks, and we've never been questioned or asked, are you planting, what kind of flowers are you planting? How big are you making the garden? No one has ever asked us. And further, I had a contact at Hydro One that would contact me if they were going to do tree trimming or anything, and she visited the gardens and was quite impressed. She said, all of our hydro right-of-ways should look like this. And I never questioned whether there was an agreement between Hydro One and Adopt-A-Parks. I just trusted that it was being done and that we were okay to go ahead.
Right. Thank you, Chair. And then the last question would be going forward. So what would be your ideal situation going forward versus the recommendation in the report?
So through the chair, what we would like as a community and the immediate neighborhood, we would like the city to negotiate whatever the lease requires to allow gardens. And I'm not sure if there's a confusion over ornamental gardens or pollinator gardens. In my mind, they look pretty, and there's nothing really ornamental or laid out about anything that we've planted. We've kind of just filled the space to make it look good. So we would like that lease negotiated with Hydro One, and we would like to continue to be able to care for the gardens. And we're willing to add more pollinator plants. We're willing to relocate some of the existing plants that don't meet the criteria. But it takes a long time for pollinator plants to mature and become pretty, and I know that plantings that we did a few years back, I think we planted 150 or more pollinator plants, and they're just starting this year to look like they're going to be something, So in the meantime, you can't just leave bare space with the odd little plant and nothing looking pretty. So we'd like to be able to continue doing that. Which means that, horticulture already told me they don't have the staff to help us just once a year. I can't imagine that it's going to be possible for them to fit in regular maintenance. So does that answer your question?
It does.
Councillor
Through you,
Nan?
Chair, just one more question if I could follow up. Are you aware of the city integrating into our operating budget on an annual basis plantings, like those spaces that are between often islands in roadways, for example, right-of-ways, they're municipal lands. The difference being this is Hydro One land with the interest of staff to get into a formal agreement between Hydro One and the municipality, which would enable us to do more work. From that perspective, are you aware of the fact that council can increase operating dollars to ensure there is the work available and the workers available to do that kind of island and right-of-way work with horticulture?
Through the chair, I believe I understand the basics of it, Councillor Nan. But then we run into a whole different can of worms because increasing budgets means increasing taxes. And we all know how popular that is with the residents of Hamilton. So we're asking to be able to help you do that work.
Thank you. So if I heard you correctly, Chair, as a community, you'd like to negotiate into the lease requirements that include the garden as best as we can to be grandfathered in, recognizing that if there are plant species that need to be relocated, that the community would like to be a part of that work and identifying other locations adjacent or within the ward, because it was community invested in.
Yes,
For
it
the
was.
community to remain a beneficiary of the plants that have matured in this space to date. 3, that you would like to maintain community's capacity to volunteer in this space. And finally, I think that's it. Those were the 3 main points. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Councillor. No one on the list, Brenda, so thank you for your delegation, and you're free to go back to your seat.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, may I please have a mover and second to receive the delegation and refer to item 11.1? Councillor Nan? Councillor White? Thank you. And we'll go to the vote, please. That carries 13-0. Thank you. Moving on to staff presentations. 8-point run response to motion for servicing condo boards previously deemed not eligible for municipal waste collection, PW 24035. Director of Waste Management, can you please introduce your presentation?
For sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Angela Story, Director of Waste Management, and I am here today with Ryan Kent, our Manager of Waste Policy and Planning, to provide a report and presentation in response to the motion received in October 2023 from Councillor Clark related to assessing options for townhouses on private roads who do not currently receive city-provided waste collection services because they do not meet the requirements of the city's approved waste design requirements for multi-res developments. As a reminder, the design requirements were approved in 2021 and were developed so that all residents in the city would have access to city-provided waste collection and diversion programs in a a safe and efficient manner. We took the opportunity last week to meet with Councillor Clark and a couple of other councillors to review the recommendation in advance of today's report. And even though Councillor Clark is unable to be at today's meeting, he did appreciate the preview of the recommendation and would be at council next week to provide his comments. I'll now hand the mic over to Ryan. I don't want to read all of his slides. I'll now hand the mic over to Ryan, so he'll provide the overview of the report in the form of a presentation, similar provided to the small group of councillors last week. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the Public Works Committee. My name is Ryan Kent. I'm the Manager of Waste Policy and Planning for the City of Hamilton. And today my presentation is, as Angela said, it responds to motion for servicing condo boards previously deemed not eligible for municipal waste collection. So as a reminder, Council approved a motion on October 25th, 2023, put forward by Councillor Clark, and that motion is that staff report back to the Public Works Committee with preferred options to either have the city compensate such condo boards for the denied service through tax credits, which GFL then provides privately, or to permit the city's contracted waste company, GFL, to reverse from cul-de-sacs with a safety person, but not limited to the above options. So as an overview, our report before you today does have three options included. The first, a tax credit applied or refund provided to properties or units who did not receive municipal waste collection due to not meeting approved design requirements. The second option, allowing city and city contracted waste collection vehicles to reverse while collecting waste. And a third option, which would fall under the other category, which is to provide pile waste collection on the municipal road allowance. I'll now speak to option one in the report, which is a tax credit or refund. So it's important to note with this option that property taxes distribute the cost of all non-area rated municipal services to all properties without the ability to opt out of property taxes for services a property doesn't utilize. So it's important to differentiate here between services paid for by user fees and services paid for through property taxes. Waste collection is not a user fee. Similar to if you don't have any children, you still pay for supporting school boards. Although historically staff haven't kept track of how many properties have been denied historically, it is obviously important for us to understand what this number is to understand the financial implication of providing a tax credit. So we did look at some numbers from 2019 to 2023 as a sample and found that within that time period, there were 90 properties that were denied municipal waste collection at that time. That's only a 5-year sample. Staff does believe that the number is considerably higher, probably 3 times that amount. You'll see in the table on the slide the financial implications, so the total lost revenue based on these different numbers. For example, the verified number of 90, when you look at that and compared to the $223, which is what is assigned to an average property tax bill for waste management services, the total lost revenue to the city at that point would be $20,000. The more realistic number that staff believes, which is 270, would be closer to $60,000. In addition, although it isn't mentioned specifically in the motion, staff have included in this table condominium high-rise towers. So it's important to note there have been a significant number of condominium high-rise towers that have also been denied municipal waste collection based on their design. And staff estimate this number to be around 5,000 at the low end. And looking at that financial implication, it's actually over 1.1 million. Combined with the townhouses, it's more around 1.2 million as a combined cost. In addition, the Financial Planning and Administration and Policy team would require an additional half FTE to support the new tax credit. Moving along to option 2, allow collection vehicles to reverse. The reversal of waste collection vehicles significantly increases the risk of waste collection, and this is a universally known thought based in the waste industry. Industry associations have documented that backing maneuvers are among the leading causes of accidents in various industries, including waste. And that according to industry data, backing represents approximately 25% of all injuries and accidents in the solid waste collection industry. In addition, this has resulted in industry associations stating that workers should plan ahead and avoid backing whenever possible. And it's important to note that this is, although many of this information is from North American industry associations, but it's also an international thought of standard as well. Implementing option 2 would require changes to our waste design requirements policy, as well as an additional half FTE for our waste collection section to ensure that we have a flag person on each vehicle. On this screen, you'll see a municipal scan that staff completed on reversing of waste collection vehicles. The left-hand column, the first column being the municipality, you'll see in the middle column whether or not these municipalities allow reversal of collection vehicles onto public roads from private roads, and you will see across the board this practice is not permitted. The third or last column limit reversals on private property to one movement, and almost across the board this is a yes, that there is a limit to one movement, one reversal movement. And moving along to option 3, which is our shared or piled waste collection, which is the other option that's provided in the report. So this is basically if you have a private road, it has a connection to a public road, and this would require all the residents to take all of their garbage, their blue boxes, their green bins to the curb at that entrance for collection. We don't currently offer this service due to the increased illegal dumping, increased litter, and decreased waste diversion associated with this practice. So basically, when there are piles of garbage, they attract more garbage, and we aren't able to enforce our waste set-out limits when we don't know where the garbage is coming from. Implementing this option, the third option, would require, again, revising the waste design requirements policy. And it's important to note that this option may not be feasible for all properties due to the size. It could work for smaller properties, but ones with larger numbers of units, it would be difficult to have enough space for all that garbage set out at the curb. This next slide speaks to the waste design requirements, which I've mentioned on a few of these slides already. So on November 10th, 2021, Council did approve the policy, City of Hamilton Waste Requirements for Design of New Developments and Collection. And the goal of this policy is to allow for residents to have access to city-provided waste collection and diversion programs in a safe and efficient manner. It's also important to note that this policy had two important revisions that were made at this particular time related to this motion in this report. The first is that it limited the number of reversals on private roads to one, and only to allow it on small infill developments where it's not possible to enter an exit and forward motion without reversing. Previous to this change, to this version of the policy, we had many developers who had 2 or 3 of these reversal motions on large sites. The second important change is that developers are no longer permitted to opt for private waste collection without staff accepting the rationale for this option. In the past, when waste collection staff or waste staff were providing comments on a new development and said you had to make this change and this change for us to service it, developers would opt to maybe not remove a unit or 2 from that design and actually ask for private waste collection. And we're seeing that the ramifications of that now, because we have more of these sites that have come up, that the residents are looking for municipal waste collection. And that brings us to our recommendation today in the report. Staff is recommending that council continue to support the current service level of only providing waste collection to properties that have been designed according to the policy, City of Hamilton Waste Requirements for Design of New Developments and Collection. We believe that this recommendation supports a consistent approach across the city and maintains safety, reduces risk, does not impact the tax base, and provides accessible and efficient waste collection. Thank you very much, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you for your presentation. Mover and seconder, and then we will go to the discussion. Councillor Pauls, Councillor Danko, any discussion? Yeah. There's a speakers list. We'll start with Councillor Danko and then Councillor Alex Wilson.
Thank you, Chair, and appreciate the report back and the discussion. This is an item that does come up from time to time and does impact a few communities in Ward 8. So happy to have this discussion. In the report, in the presentation, you outlined the financial risk if we were to offer tax credits, estimated at $60,000 just for singles and townhomes, but up to $2.2 million if we then include condos and high-rises. And you mentioned at the end there about the development approval process. So I wanted to just be absolutely clear on that the projects that were approved on the basis of private waste collection, that was, when those came to planning committee or to site plan, that was specifically approved on the basis of private, and as you said, there was concessions that were considered as part of that approval process.
Manager?
Through the chair, that's correct. So as I said, a lot of these were previous to our current version of the policy, but it was approved through the design or development application process. I would add to that just to say that a standard comment from Waste is whenever that is the case, that in sales agreements that we do require that it be noted to the residents that are purchasing those units that they're notified that private waste collection would be required on those sites.
Thank you. And then further to that is just the risk to the municipality if we were to open this up to other considerations, is I'm really concerned about the future development approvals process of not having consistency. And I kind of think it would open the door up to more applications for private waste collection, because then future residents would receive a tax break, and it just kind of undermines our consistent policies through the whole city for when we do or when we don't accept private versus public waste collection.
Through the chair, I would agree with that statement that the current policy that we have in place, if this motion or if we made changes to that it would definitely undermine it maybe a little bit, because we are trying to have a consistent approach. And anytime you deviate from that approach, it makes it a little bit more difficult for staff to support the policy that's in place at this time.
Councillor?
Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you. Next up, Councillor Alex Wilson.
Thank you. Just, I guess, following up where Councillor Danko was leaving off, we at the Waste Management Subcommittee heard some of where this is going. This is a leading question. Like, I know the answer, you know the answer. But for the committee, what is the review period for this? Like, when are we just did in 2021, we did the waste design guidelines. Some folks, especially as we do infill, are being impacted by those. This was a motion by council to kind of look at one specific element of those design guidelines. Is there a holistic review coming forward? Do you anticipate any changes to the plan before 2026 or within these next couple of years?
So to answer your one question about how often it is reviewed, the previous version of the document was in 2015. So that's how long it had been since revisions. Staff are looking at new programs that may impact that if we do implement will change. One that we are looking at right now, which we presented at Waste Management Subcommittee, was about servicing small multi-residential buildings. So as we know, infill developments are becoming more popular here in the city of Hamilton. Right now, to help service them, what we are looking at, staff is looking at, is implementing garbage carts for those smaller buildings as opposed to using large front-end metal bins. So that is one of the changes, probably the most important change right now. And when we do have a program in place, we will put forward that a revision to that policy. So it isn't set right now, but I would expect on that one, that program, at minimum, that early of next year, we would probably be implementing that change.
Councillor?
Thanks, really appreciate that. I know I've been flagging a specific couple of ward incidences that have been coming up that would benefit from that review. If other folks are kind of coming into that, I think it's helpful to know when we're doing that active work and reviewing our policies. So really huge thanks to the Waste team for the report back on this and the ongoing efforts for continuous improvement.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Up next, Councillor Crutch.
Thanks for your report on this. I think unarguably the most high rises and condominiums are in Ward 2. And this, of course, comes up a fair bit. One of the things that I've spoken to Director Story about in the past is this piece you really highlight in your presentation, so I wanted to unpack it a bit around the safety for and the accidents that are caused in relation to reversing or backing vehicles out. And one thing that can really help to mitigate those kinds of harms, if I understand it correctly, and this is where the question's leading, are things like having a second or third person available in the area to help with the backing out process so that you're not having a person sort of alone trying to navigate the vehicle, not being able to see various blind spots, because despite all the mirrors and things that are going on here, we still know that these kinds of issues occur where people are hurt reversing. So can you speak to how, what other municipalities may have done, or how you could understand how there's a way to actually mitigate that harm from being a concern at all?
So through the chair, first thing I would say is through the program that I just mentioned about having those carts, there are some buildings right now that have front-end bins that are reversing that we're hoping to get off of that service, and we could switch to these carts. Obviously, there are some that won't be able to fit into that. Technology right now on waste collection vehicles, they do have backup cameras from multiple angles. Some of them have sensors. There are a lot of different functions. However, I would say that it doesn't make it impossible for something to happen. These vehicles, whether they're moving a forward motion or a reverse motion, there's many blind spots. Just because you have many cameras doesn't mean that the driver can look at all of those cameras at one time, right? That just makes sense. So I would say that that's a mitigating factor to have these sensors, to have those standard pieces of equipment, such as reversal of cameras, such as beepers. Those are all standard pieces of equipment. For reversal, for staff, yes, you can have flag people on there. A front-end vehicle, it's not that practical to have a second person on there. Some of those cabs, there's not a space for them. I would say that in my review of best practices in certain municipalities, some say that you should have two people on directing a vehicle when it comes by, because it protects different blind spots. So you can absolutely do those. I know that most of our waste collection vehicles that the city has right now do have a second person on those vehicles. That's why we said we would only require half a FTE to do that. But I think the most important fact here is that just because you have all these different safety measures doesn't mean that you're going to never have an accident, and you can completely eliminate that risk. And I think that's probably the most important piece here.
Councillor?
Thanks. Through the chair, I think that answers my question, and I appreciate you clarifying it, because I just wanted to make sure that was something I understood better. The second bit is about the policy we brought forward, and it's good that we have that policy now, which helps people who are building anew to be able to figure out these kinds of things. I presume, though, and having looked at far too many planning documents, that regardless of whether or not we have that policy, we have a site application system here in the city. So if someone had applied and they proposed building something that didn't meet the city's specifications for safe waste retrieval, we obviously would have told those individuals, hey, look, you're doing this thing, and when you do it, it's going to have this impact. Now, whether or not they pass that information along to residents who might live there, whatever is up to them, and we can't, contractually force them to do so. But I'm pretty certain that we would have those conversations, and those are some of the notes come back in planning files all the time. Like, I've seen them myself. Just wanted to confirm that that was like a really habitual practice we've been involved in forever here at the city, since we've had a site-specific planning process for whomever can answer that.
Yeah, so through the chair, part of what my team does is they review all the development applications for waste, and they provide comments based on our policy that we have. So it's standard that we see those development applications. I also have staff that participate in the development review team meetings, where they meet with the applicants for development applications early on in the process. And we also have, entertaining meetings with different applicants to talk about their specific applications. So we absolutely look at everything that goes into plan that they circulate to us. We look at them, we provide comments on it, and we attend meetings to support our comments.
Thank you. Since this is on the presentation, would you prefer I kept my comments till we get to the report? Then I'll do just that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. No one else on the speakers list, so we will, I think we have a mover. Yeah, Councillor Pauls.
I'm looking at the municipal scan here. Right now, it says that we do not allow vehicles to back up. But then on the limited reversal on private property to one movement, it says, yes, we allow that. Would they have a flag person for that one movement? And what does it mean, just one movement?
So, through the chair, basically right now, there are some small properties. There's only one ability for us to, what we use is, it's called a T turnaround or a hammerhead turnaround. And it's been specifically designed for our waste collection vehicles to go into a site and make a 3-point turn and exit. Large sites, they usually have a continuous road allowance, which allows us to drive through. We limit that to one because we want it to we only want to use that reversal where it's absolutely necessary. And that's why we limit it to one, which means there's one way in and one way out, for example, and there's no road configuration which allows for us to actually move around. So that's why we limit it to one. I'm hoping that that makes sense. You were speaking to the second column, which we allow a reversal of collection vehicles onto public roads, that we do not allow that. So that's reversing from a private road onto a public road or a driveway, for example, if you're talking about a multi-residential building. So that's the movement where it's no. The movement that we do allow, yes, which is the reversals, is only on the private road and not moving out onto the public road.
Okay, so because in 2019, I had a condo on Upper Wentworth. The one side of the condo allowed it, but not that one because they couldn't back up. So you're saying if it's a private road, they could go in, they must be able to continue and go back up without backing? Not even once. Is that what you're saying?
Through the chair, unless it's what staff has considered a very small infill development, and we need a 3-point turn to get in and out in a forward motion. There are some of those cases, but otherwise, no, we don't allow for it. Moving forward, starting in 2021, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I believe we have a mover and seconder, clerk, to accept the report. Perfect. So we'll go to the vote, please. That carries 13-0, so I'll take a mover and second, and then I'll open up the discussion. Councillor Danko, Councillor Alex Wilson, and I'll open it up and I'll start with Councillor Crutch.
Thank you very much. So a couple of things here. There's both correspondence here and a report that was conducted by students from the University of Waterloo, and then there's staff's report. And so I wanted to just speak to both these briefly by just saying that I agree with the statement that starts off this report, which says it was found that there's a current mismatch between the city's waste removal standards and its targets to densify its built-up area. Like, I don't disagree in general that that's like fundamentally an idea, that we're saying we want to maximize sites that exist as much as we possibly can for housing, but at the same time, then we're saying if we do that, then we can't necessarily provide the waste management services we want to. Yeah, that's called growth management. And I think that the city and its partners in development have to do a better job of negotiating that together. Like downtown, we're running out of land. I'm just gonna keep saying that. Like, it's not an infinite resource. We're running out of vacant land, I should say. And if we want to densify by going up a little higher, recognizing that we can replace those units by doing so, and keep a footprint on the ground so we can responsibly collect waste, great, we should do that. Because we're not or haven't been keeping up with the demand of the density in the core for those additional services. I'm just acknowledging that tension that exists, right? Like, that's a reality. And we now have standards that exist that say, hey, if you're developing here, the best thing to do is make sure you adhere to these standards if you want to make sure you can accept waste services from the city. And there are going to come some trade-offs with that. But it's important because this is only touching the tip of the iceberg, in my opinion, when it comes to managing waste. So much of the area we're talking about that is most impacted by this problem, in Ward 2 specifically, is also home to a lot of old infrastructure, old houses that have been converted into businesses. I can think of places like Gore Park, Hess Village, Augusta Street. These weren't necessarily designed for the kinds of things that are happening, but we have to try and manage the waste in those areas. And so there's a whole series of things attached to this idea where we don't have the waste management services we need to meet the ongoing demand. Okay. Like, I know it's not great that people have to take on these privatized services to meet their own demands, but they were told that we couldn't do that in advance of building, and they went the way they wanted to go. So that's cool. They were like, we're gonna build more units, and we're gonna be able to make a profit off those units in the short term. But residents and others who take on this property are gonna pay in the long term to do privatized garbage services. That's a trade-off. That's okay, that was their choice. That's the way the system works. So I really appreciate this thorough report. It tells us so much about why we're doing this, including the safety reasons we're doing it for. I don't think it makes sense for us to be employing many, many, many other individuals to get involved in an activity that's inherently unsafe anyways. It seems like not a wise way to manage a serious problem. So just want to thank staff for this. I agree with their assessment. I read the reports here and understand the tensions that people are drawing. I'm glad we have a system in place and have had one since 2021. And hopefully going forward, we won't encounter this problem as often as we do. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Up next, Councillor Danko.
Thank you, Chair, and again, thank you to our staff and the work that the Waste Management Subcommittee has also done on this item. I know there's been quite a few discussions about this in particular. I think, you know, through the report allowing reversing, well, you know, it's kind of alleged that private contractors reverse all the time. It's fine, don't worry about it. I think that we see here that it is a serious issue, and no other municipality in Ontario allows that. So being consistent, waste piles on the road allowance is a complete non-starter for, I would hope, or very obvious reasons. And then the issue of tax credits. And I think a really important part of that discussion on tax credits was the difference between municipal property taxes and the purpose of municipal property taxes and user fees. So as has been said, you know, these developments were approved on the basis of having private waste collection. And I don't blame residents or condo boards or individuals from organizing and coming forward and saying, hey, listen, we are paying for a municipal service that we don't receive. We'd like to have a credit for that and not have to pay for that. But I'm hoping that if this passes today, following the staff recommendation, that now we have a report and I'm hoping, very unified council direction that we stand behind the current policies. And then, you know, as these discussions continue to happen, as they absolutely will, we have a firm direction from this council on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Danko. I have no one else on the speakers list, so we'll move to the vote. That carries 14-0. Thank you, everyone.
Mr. Chair, before we move on, I had Councillor Alex Wilson marked absent on the vote for the presentation, but he was here. So can we do a revote, please?
We sure can. We're doing a revote. And the vote is up. And the revote carries 14-0. Thank you, Clerk. Moving on to consent items 9.1, Woodlands Park Washroom Rehabilitation, PW 24033. Director, please introduce your report.
Thank you, Chair. Indra Maharzan, Director of Corporate Facilities and Energy Management. On January 2nd, 2024, we have an unfortunate event in Woodlands Park washroom that totally damaged the washroom, and staff moved very quickly to secure the site, procure a structural engineer to assess the damages, apply for partial demolition building permit, and we are in a stage where we have completed majority of the findings and going through RICS to to secure insurance, third-party insurance, and its engineer to proceed with the rehabilitation of this site. So this report highlights some of the completed milestones, preliminary cost estimates to proceed with the construction and rehabilitation of this washroom and other activities in coming months. The procurement through RICS to secure a third-party constructor through the third-party insurance company is within the procurement bylaw, and the staff is recommending to go that path from the perspective of getting this work done in a quicker timeline. And also, the cost estimate today is estimated to be $1.1 to $1.3 million, which will be covered through a third-party insurer, and the city carries a deductible of $500,000 for this project. So staff are available in WebEx, and I will be happy to answer any questions on this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. I'll take a mover and seconder, and then to receive the report, and then we'll move into discussion. Councillor Nan, Councillor Crutch, and we'll go to Councillor Nan for discussion.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you, Director Maharajan, as well as your team, as well as Director Graham and your team in keeping the Ward 3 office informed since the fire that took place at the beginning of the new year, damaging the washroom facility at Woodlands Park. I know it was fast and furious communications at the beginning of the year, and I still struggle with how long things take. It's June. The fire took place in January. And I think my sense is one that is shared with the community, right? It's hard to understand sometimes why things take so long. That said, if staff could provide some clarity in terms of what the insurer has agreed to cover.
Director, I don't know if that's to you or someone else.
Yeah. Through Chair, Councillor Nan, the city, through the insurer, has $500,000 deductible. That is the city's portion of the expenses. And the insurer's consultant has provided the cost estimate of about $800,000 to the higher upset of $1.1 to $1.3 million. So the difference between $500,000 and that amount will be covered by insurer through our risk management group.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So understanding the financial amount that's in the report, so if you could just publicly state, what will that physically cover?
Director.
In terms of the facility.
So as any insurance provider, scope is the insurer will cover the total rehabilitation of the facility. However, since the washroom has faced vandalism in many occurrences, the staff is working on upgrading some of the components in the washroom. Now we are in a phase of negotiation with the insurer whether that incremental cost to have a higher quality components will be covered by them. So there might be a chances that some of those costs to ensure the higher grade components might not be covered, that incremental cost. However, the insurer will cover the base cost. In summary, the site safety, including security patrol, temporary portable washroom, site inspection, and any structural engineering work, site rehabilitation to meet the current building code will all be covered by the insurer.
Thank you. And the report also referenced, Chair, the ability for us to, as a municipality, make sure this 50-year-old facility, as it is rehabilitated, is done so meeting today's requirements, and that includes accessibility. Just confirmation on that.
Director.
Through Chair, the requirements of existing Ontario Building Code will be complied in this work.
Thank you. I also want to thank Chair, the staff who participated in a community meeting that took place at the end of April. Woodlands Park is also a park that benefits from community adoptees that do a lot of work, not only animating the space, but caring for the location, as well as gardening and all that good work as well. So I wanted to hear from staff who attended that community meeting and the conversations that were taking place that evening about the future of the park and some of the ways in which the community's desires either can be or cannot be accommodated inside of this, the work to rehabilitate the washroom facility. If I could, through you to either director.
Director Graham?
Through the chair, Cynthia Graham, Director of Environmental Services. So I was able to attend the public meeting and heard a lot of great feedback from the community and, how much everybody in that neighborhood just loves this park, which is great. We did hear a desire for more usable community space at this location. Currently, the building is set up with washrooms and change rooms. And so as staff, we're taking a look to see what we can do to retrofit the change room spaces to possibly be upgraded or changed to be able to accommodate that community use. That might have to be a phase 2, but we can report back on what those costs and what that might look like for the community, and in particular, if there's enough space there. In addition, I also heard from the community that a plan of what could possibly be done at this park to bring additional amenities, more comprehensive review of what is there and what could be improved, because over the past several years, it's been a little bit piecemeal of installing things here and there. So we committed to do that work in a future year as workloads are available and as budget is allocated. So we do commit to doing that work and can incorporate any improvements to the building and surrounding in the park area at that time.
Thank you, Chair. Final question would be, I heard, Director, you mentioned that we're going to request expedient reconstruction as best we can as a municipality. And we do have a spray pad that is under construction or ready to break ground very soon there as well, with the projected opening date for Labor Day. Is there any chance that the timeline of alignment will happen with the bathroom facility being open when the spray pad ribbon is cut?
Director?
Through Chair, Councillor, you're referring to the renovated washroom?
Yes.
I believe that is not possible because, and Director Graham can correct me, the spray pad is coming online this summer.
Labor Day.
Labor Day, and staff has already started work in the Woodlands washroom to ensure the electrical supply needed for spray pad to be operational is being worked now. The renovated washroom itself, our staff is planning very hard to have the roof replaced before the snow starts falling and subsequently work interior components throughout next few months and potentially have the washroom open for public by the end of 2025. Again, the timelines are considering the worst case scenario, but since we are going through our approach of insurer, we are confident that we might be able to complete this washroom and open it before end of 2025, Councillor.
What, Chair?
So I just want to get confirmation here. Director, the washroom is going to take till the end of 2025?
That's correct. It will be fully open to the public by end of 2025.
Back to you, Councillor.
Oh, man. Yeah. So, oh dear. I guess my question then is, if alignment is not possible with the spray pad opening for Labor Day, what is the plan to accommodate the children using the facility of the spray pad and having adequate bathroom facility and changing spaces?
Director?
Through the chair, we do have a portable washroom on site right now for community use. We can look at increasing the number of portable washrooms when the spray pad opens for the remainder of the spray pad season, and work to ensure that we have adequate portable washrooms throughout 2025 until the building is ready to be opened.
And if I could, through you, Chair, just one more thing. Is that portable washroom on site the porta potty style, right?
Through the chair, yes.
Yeah. Chair, it's really unfortunate that, here we are really close to finally delivering a spray pad in an area of the ward that doesn't have a lot of access to water play features. It is a park that the municipality took down all of the heritage trees back when the Stelco strike took place. We chopped them all down and since then have been replanting these trees. The canopy is yet not to the point where it can provide shade. And at this really otherwise important period where the community is really excited about coming back into the park, we are now going to line up a line of porta potties to welcome them to their spray pad. I'll work with staff offline to see if we can get a more dignified solution temporarily between then and now. Thank you.
I feel your pain, Councillor Nan. Councillor Crutch.
Thanks. My question is about the portable washrooms, and frankly, I'm asking this for a selfish reason slightly because it anticipates a motion I have later on the agenda, but it's specifically about these portable washrooms. And so I wondered if you could speak to Director Graham, sort of what the change has been and what services we're providing using these portable washrooms and how long they've been available in Woodlands Park, et cetera. I think it's important for later. So thank you.
Director Graham.
Through the chair, staff moved to bring portable washrooms to the site as soon as the fire happened at this location, knowing that this was a location for the winter washroom program. So the portable washroom basically took the place of the building facility as part of that winter washroom program and has continued on throughout the summer, being opened and closed by staff according to the hours posted for that program.
Councillor.
Thanks. That's simply, I just wanted that out there. We have had these washrooms in parks now for over a winter period, over a big part of the summer period. It is seemingly working fine. We have changed contractors with washrooms over the course of the last year, and this relationship is going well. So I just wanted to say that at least we are able to maintain some of these services in our parks, and I'll speak to my motion later about that, but thank you for that, Director Graham.
Thank you, Councillor. Last person on the speakers list, Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chair Spadafora. Good afternoon. In spite of the fact that Councillor Nan forgot her promise and assurance to me that I could be the seconder for her report, my self-esteem will survive. I just want to lend my strong support for whatever Director Maharjan and Director Graham can do to expedite the necessity of the newly built to be a washroom facility at Woodlands. How it happened, of course, I would probably have a major difference of opinion, how it could not have happened. However, it is what it is. And moving forward, I know from what I've learned from Councillor Nan primarily, the children and the families of that neighborhood, as we have resuscitated and rejuvenating North End neighborhoods and central neighborhoods. It's important they have a safe place with as many amenities as possible. And I respect what Director Maharjan has said in terms of wanting to do this properly. That may take more time. But I just want to lend my Ward 6 support to Councillor Nan to ensure that the facility will be built and built properly and hopefully as soon as possible. Thank you, Chair Spadafora.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. My apologies and I'll take full responsibility for the mishap on the mover and seconder. So we are going to amend this, Clerk, to moved by Councillor Nan and second by Councillor Jackson, as Councillor Wang has graciously allowed you to be the seconder here. So all the thanks to Councillor Wang, and we'll go to Councillor Pauls for a question or comment. Sorry, Councillor.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just a question. I just heard that the spray pad will be open on Labor Day weekend. I'm wondering, when do we close them? School starts.
Director
I'm just
Graham?
wondering what's the deadline? If the director?
Through the chair, we do start to close them as the weather gets cooler later into September. We're recognizing that we still can get some hot days in September, so staff will pick away at closing our 71 spray pads across the city, and that does take some time, but we do like to have them closed up before freeze up, so usually into October.
We do have staff that goes to the spray pads when kids go to school and all that? I thought it was right on Labor Day. I didn't know it was extended, but.
Through the chair, technically, we can start closing them as of after Labor Day, but because we have so many, we do take a bit of time to do that. We have contractors that help us with closing them up, and staff go out and inspect that work. We do recognize, though, that there are some hot days in September, so we would target the smaller neighborhood-style spray pads first, leaving the community ones open until last to close.
So my next question was who decides which spray pads gets closed? But obviously, you do it slowly. You look at the circumstance and you close them one at a time? Like, how do you decide that?
Through the chair, staff that are the overseers of the spray pads would make those decisions based on their knowledge of the systems and the priority through the wards, particularly with the community parks, wanting to keep them open a little bit longer.
If there's any solace for Councillor Nan, is that it's a shorter season, that they won't have a washroom. So I do support that we make sure we get the washroom done. But the only good thing is that it is at the end of the year. So, so thank you for that. Okay.
Thank you. We have a mover and a seconder, a new seconder. So I guess we can go to the vote. That carries 14-0. Thank you. Just one comment before we move on. My apologies. I just wanted to recognize Director Marjan, who was the winner of the Patrick McDonald Community Service Award. I came and thanked you. I should have said this at the beginning because you're supposed to follow an agenda, but as a chair, I can do whatever I want, almost. But anyways, congratulations. Ontario Public Works Association is where you won your award. And so on behalf of the Public Works Committee, congratulations and keep up the good work. Another mistake, Councillor Jackson. That's 2 already today, so in case you're keeping track. Moving on to discussion items 11.1, maintenance and beautification of Birch Avenue Green Space and Gardens, PW 24031, citywide. Director, please introduce your report.
Through the chair, Cynthia Graham, Director of Environmental Services. So this report is in response to direction given to staff to provide information on how we can better support community-led gardens across the city. Delegates to the Public Works Committee meeting identified challenges related to their ability to keep up with the work of maintaining the gardens. And because of changes to volunteer capabilities and costs, staff reviewed the challenges and have outlined a plan for 2024 to support these gardens, including watering at Birch Avenue and weeding support along the Pipeline Trail, and will report back to the 2025 budget for costs to support more community-led gardens in a more formal way. Working with the staff team that has historically overseen the Food Community Garden Program, staff will review and see what efficiencies we can find to better support all gardens. Finally, the report recommendation directs staff to enter into a renewed agreement with Hydro One, specifically for the Birch Avenue gardens, as those are not on city property, and new requirements and restrictions require an update to that agreement. The work outlined in this report will be joint between Parks and Horticulture, and we do have staff in the gallery and online to answer any questions as needed. And if I can just quickly address some of the higher level concerns raised by the delegate today. I just want to say that I completely empathize with Brenda and her team of volunteers who have dedicated so much time and effort into beautifying this area. Unfortunately, the new requirements and new contract at Hydro One have resulted in our new understanding that these gardens are not meeting the requirements of our license agreement. In particular, we are not permitted to have volunteer do work on our licensed lands. And the plant lists that have been updated from Hydro have led to identifying some of the plants not being compliant. Our ideal resolution would be to find a way to continue to have Brenda and the other volunteers continue to work in this area, and the recommendation of the report would give staff the authority to try and negotiate how this might happen. This change is not city initiated, and we would not have imposed these new requirements if this was on city lands.
Thank you, Director. I'm going to get a mover and seconder to approve the report, and then I'll open up for discussion. Councillor Nan, Councillor Wang, and we'll go to Councillor Nan, followed by Councillor Alex Wilson. Councillor Nan, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Director, for that overview, as well as your high-level response to the delegation. Really appreciating that in the recommendation, it really is trying to approach the issue holistically. Chair, first one is looking at specifically allowing pollinator gardens, recognizing that that is a permissible type of planting on Hydro One lands. The goal of establishing and reestablishing a lease and making sure that those new requirements from Hydro One are reflected inside of our a new lease. The Part C, I think, is going to be the most important piece of work for our municipality and our community partners moving forward, and I'm really looking forward to that report coming back. But if I could, just a couple more follow-up questions. So, Director, you mentioned there is a possibility, I guess it's hard for you to predict this because you're not in direct negotiations right now, but what you're indicating to us as a committee today and to the public is that you would be seeking a possible solution to enable community partners to continue to volunteer on the site?
Director?
Through the chair, that would be my ideal solution. Because, I mean, the gardens at this location, as you've heard, have been established for many years. Many, many hours of effort and love and care have been dedicated to that, and we would not want to see those removed. I don't know what the path forward to be able to do that is, but we will do our best to try and advocate for that. At the moment, the indication is that that will not be possible, but we'll continue to work to see if there's a way that we can make that happen.
Thank you.
Councillor?
In that realm of possibility then, Chair, the question that Delegate Brenda Duke raised about should some existing plants be deemed unpermissible moving forward, and then the removal of those plants, which I would define as being a community asset, it is classified as green infrastructure, in my view. If that green infrastructure could be serving the community in another location, the limitation being it's Hydro One land, Hydro One is saying no work can be performed by volunteers. Should the negotiations fail, could there be a possibility where the municipality works with the community partners to enable them to fulfill that role? Not too dissimilar to like student programs or internships or that kind of thing.
Director?
Through the chair, we'd be more than happy to look at alternative sites, and we can also commit to having our staff dig out the plants that would not meet the Hydro One plant list so that they could be salvaged and planted in a new location that would be compliant.
Thank you. And so through you, Chair, just to be clear, the community feels a sense of ownership of that, which you understand very clearly, Director. You've mentioned it a couple of times already in the course of this meeting. But in terms of community having a role in that process with city, not necessarily with Hydro One, but to effectively enable the partnership to continue between the municipality and our community partners when that work takes place.
Through the chair, my understanding of the requirements of the Hydro One license agreement would be that the city staff would have to dig them out, but then when they could be moved to a new location, certainly we can work with the community members to plant them in a way that was pleasing to them.
Okay, thank you. And then final question. The B portion of the recommendation says $2,500 annually, and that's not just for the Birch Avenue green space, that includes the pipeline trail. Could we get a breakdown of what that includes in terms of, is that labor predominantly, or is that also equipment and?
Just 1 second, Councillor. We're going to have.
Through the chair, yeah. I've got Robin Pollard, Manager of Forestry and Horticulture. It would be predominantly her staff to support, and so I'll just let her outline what that involves.
Thank you.
Through the chair, Manager of Forestry and Horticulture, Robin Pollard. So the breakdown of the $2,500, just really generally, is a couple of visits to the pollinator patches on Pipeline, and that would be labor. I think we're probably looking at about 3 visits throughout this summer. And then for Birch Ave, it would be a couple of visits of our watering truck. So that would be labor as well.
Councillor?
A couple of trips of the water truck.
Water truck.
Thank you, Chair. In anticipation of what Weather Canada and all the other experts are saying, July, August, and September are on deck to be among the hottest summer months we've had in a while. 2 visits seems insufficient. Is there a possibility for increasing the number of water truck visits?
Manager or director?
Through the chair, I think Robin and her team would keep an eye on the weather and adjust as needed. And then this is our opportunity to be able to collect that data about how much effort and water and labor is required to support these gardens, and would incorporate those costs going forward into the 2025 operating budget. This was just our best guess at this time, what we think might need to be required to support the gardens.
Thank you. So regular monitoring is possible, and communication from the community that if they're observing the plants are not faring well, is that welcome? Through you, Chair?
I think it's going to be welcome, but Director, confirm, please.
Through the chair, I know that Robin has been in touch with the community members. We can provide them her information to connect with her team. And so if there was particular times of the summer that were struggling, Robin and her team do have regular watering contracts, and so would see those impacts on their other gardens and can be able to predict when these gardens might need a bit of extra help. But knowing that soil and water conditions vary across the city, that feedback would be fine.
Thank you. And last question, Chair, I promise.
Last one, Councillor.
Is what is the plan for regular communication updates as you're negotiating with Hydro One? And that being for the interest of the Ward 3 office, but also our community partners.
Director?
Through the chair, I hadn't anticipated another report back formally to this committee. With the recommendation A, we do have, if approved, the authority to enter into that agreement with Hydro One. We can be updating the ward councillor and the community with the results of that negotiations as needed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nan. Councillor Alex Wilson, please.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, I think all of my questions are just contained to recommendation C and some of that ongoing work to move upstream, essentially, and be less responsive. I know I've chatted with Director Graham a couple times about community gardens. We've had some local ones that are being transitioned as we find these different pieces of how all of these gardens are managed across the city, and we're trying to use the resources we have. So understanding that's the problem statement, or that's where we're starting. I think it was earlier in 2024, over some email conversations, there was a mention of a policy coming forward to talk about how to work with community gardens. There's engagement from the Climate Office that's talked about in the report. Is this the same report back coming in C? Are there different reports? And is there a further sense of kind of timeline of when some of these pieces will be coming forward?
Director?
Through the chair, to the councillor, it's the same report. So what has happened is the city does have a staff person dedicated to overseeing food community gardens. So that would be the ones at Victoria Park and in Churchill Park. And those are rented out and dedicated to food production by community members. What has typically happened in the past for these types of pollinator gardens or more ornamental gardens in parks is we were fine with having those gardens installed with the understanding that the city didn't have the resources to assist with maintaining them. So understanding that they provide a benefit to the community, that it helps with beautification, and that the volunteers often do struggle over a longevity of time with people moving or interest waning. We wanted to more formally be able to take those gardens into our fold and support those gardens in that way. So in talking with the Office of Climate Change Initiatives, we wanted to see if there were synergies between that existing program and this program, knowing that basically having a volunteer agreement would be similar, but then also be able to identify what supports Robin's team would need in order to be providing mulch and helping with watering and some weeding expertise and things like that. So the timeline for this, I mean, I think ideally we would have brought it forward by now, knowing that I've been talking about it for a little bit of time, but with recent events, we sort of got a little sidetracked. So I'm hoping that by the end of the year, we'll be able to bring forward a program and a report for your consideration, and that would help inform future budgets.
Councillor?
Thank you. So understanding, yeah, this was already on the work plan, but because this report's coming forward today, let's include it as a recommendation for that report back. That report's coming regardless of C today, but direction helps, understand that. Is the Birch Avenue site the only Hydro Trail partnership that's in the city, and to what extent will relationships with Hydro One, whether that be a recommendation for future exploration, or what can we as committee expect in terms of the relationship with Hydro One in that report back?
Director Graham?
Through the chair, we have license agreements with Hydro One for the use of their lands across the city. The Birch Avenue Garden is the only one that I know of where there's a community-led garden planting initiative. Most of the other uses are for trails or open spaces and things like that, and not necessarily formal garden programs. So I expect the report back will address community and pollinator gardens on city property, knowing that individual locations that might have license agreements with Hydro One would have to be negotiated on an individual basis, so really would probably fall outside of that formal program.
Councillor?
Through you, Chair, just wondering to what extent the TRCA's Meadowway project will be considered in that report back. I bring it up because I know that the Toronto Region Conservation Authority partnered with Hydro One with the hope of creating a blueprint to make future negotiations easier. That doesn't mean that's what's happened, but that's the model to reference. It has community gardens, it has pollinator projects. But I'm sensing from this conversation that maybe what happened there was the TRCA said, we're gonna do this multi-use project. From day one, it's gonna have community involvement, there's gonna be a dog park, and all those things were really front and center in the lease with Hydro One, and that project had millions of private funding and lots of media around it, and the city was involved. So I can understand why maybe Hydro One took different approaches with it. Is it that we're learning in these lease negotiations what to negotiate around if our goal is community engaged plantings and community engaged management? Or is it that we're finding that it's not that we just weren't on the same page with Hydro One, or Hydro One's understanding shifted? Are we feeling more like there's a change in direction or policy from Hydro One and their willingness to engage in this work? Does that make sense? Like, is it just we had the wrong contract and we'll get it right this time, or is it that they're pulling away from this type of work, it sounds like?
Director?
Through the chair, our lived experience with Hydro One over the last several years has been that there's been a shift away from wanting public access and use of hydro properties. So I don't expect that this new license agreement will fix those issues. I anticipate that it will become more and more difficult for us to be able to develop trails, have gardens, do dog parks and things like that on hydro properties. I just got a text from Kara, the manager of Parks and Cemeteries. I missed, Dundas does have a formal garden on hydro lands as well, so that's another one that we would have to adjust. But I think our preference would be, let's get these gardens and this beautification and improvement on lands that we own and have control over and can work with the volunteers to be able to maintain these.
Councillor?
Thank you. I think that answers my questions there. No, it's really unfortunate, like, hearing that answer. I'm wondering if, again, like, it's when the TRCA was doing their negotiations, they're just negotiating with a different Hydro One. There was the optics of, hey, millions of dollars of private money is going to this. Why would you be saying no? Or why they've been able to get that mix here. I don't think it's our staff not doing anything right in Hamilton. Like, it is frustrating to hear those types of good news stories and those potential projects to engage in public land be turned away just because it gets hard. So thinking on that, how to move, like what that looks like. I know I'm looking at the other Councillor Wilson a lot on this because we've been having some conversations about the hydro trail in our area and what could be possible there, but no, appreciative of all the work that's gone into that, looking forward to that policy when it can come forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Alex Wilson. Now Councillor Maureen Wilson.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Alex Wilson, for those questions. I feel like I'm not as prepared for this report as I should be, but if I could just take off from where Councillor Alex Wilson left off. I'm befuddled. We seem to have an acknowledged shortage of green space, both for planned and passive use. We seem to have continuous efforts to string together through SAFE and other means are parts of our community. And we do have a ribbon of green space in the form of hydro corridors, which would check all those boxes. So for me to understand some of the referenced resistance, if I could just delve a little bit further into that so I understand those parameters. We are being told as a corporation that this hesitancy, unwillingness to provide for planned activity throughout or within hydro corridors, is that unique to Hamilton? Is that a stated policy we have received? Is that something we're just picking up during our conversations? I'm just trying to, because I don't accept it. And so I would love to get to a point where we actually could, if there is no formal response back, request that our staff pursue and engage in through the chair, if I could get a sense better of that.
Yeah, Director, if you have anything specific or official from Hydro One, or if they're your feelings, then I think Councillor Maureen Wilson would like to ask them for something official.
Through the chair. So when we come forward as staff, identifying a desire to, as an example, create a trail on hydro properties, we do find it challenging to meet all of the requirements or restrictions that are put forward by Hydro One in order to get the approvals to build the project. One of the specific challenges we do find is that there's an unwillingness to give a high level, yeah, I think this could work, before we get through all of the design phases and spend all of the money to do all of the detailed design, with no seemingly assurance that we can get this over the finish line. So it does make it challenging on staff to be able to pursue that with the staff at Hydro One on the other side. I don't think that there is an overarching policy to say these aren't permitted. I think it just ends up being that the requirements are so restrictive that it's difficult to see our way forward on it. I do know that GM Thorne, when he was here, did start some conversations with the upper levels of management at Hydro One and did get some assurance that they were willing to have city uses on hydro lands. It just ends up being difficult to actually implement the design and get the permits.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you, through the chair. So trying to give as much grace as possible for the utilities, but unless and until we offer that vision and identify that need overall, then I can imagine why you would have a utility that is boxed in by issues of liability, uncertainty about what is being proposed, the parameters around that. So if I could just flag that and perhaps speak to Director Graham further, if we could kind of lift off from, should come as no surprise to any of us that GM Thorne was magically having those discussions and having that vision. So if I could just check mark that for a offline conversation, because I'm not I just think it's a missed opportunity and it's frustrating, particularly in parts of our city that are inadequately serviced with space. On the other thing, just so I understand the scope of C, that would include, if I can get to it, of course I can't get to it, all public space. And the reason I'm asking is that in May of last year, this committee supported the expense of $30,000 for a strategically invested pollinator garden along New York Boulevard. We want to continue that. We're trying to create a pollinator superhighway, but those efforts will be for naught if we don't continue that work throughout the city, because bees and the like don't respect ward boundaries. So where I'm going with this is, yes, we're tapping into volunteer efforts to do a lot of the implementation, and they're willing to do that, but like the rest of us, they're getting old. Just seeking some assurance that on C, that includes public lands.
Director?
Through the chair,
City land.
my intent was to include city lands, if that's what you would, just want a clarification that that was the intent, yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. No one else on the speakers list. We have a mover and seconder. We will go to the vote. That carries 14-0. Thank you. Moving on to motions. 12.1, funding for tree planting on Mohawk College Fennel Campus, 135 Fennel Avenue West, Hamilton. Ward 8, Councillor Danko, please introduce your motion and your seconder, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is moved by myself, seconded by yourself. This is a motion for funding for tree planting on Mohawk College Fennel Campus, and I'm just going to read the resolution. A, that the supply and installation of 18 large caliber trees be planted on Mohawk College Fennel Campus property at 135 Fennel Avenue West in Hamilton in coordination with the Mohawk College funded from the Ward 8 Capital Discretionary Reserve to an upset limit of $9,000, and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized and directed to execute any required agreements and ancillary documents with terms and conditions in a form satisfactory to the city solicitor. And just real quick, this direction goes back a number of years in working with Mohawk College as an important anchor institution in the city of Hamilton and in Ward 8. Mohawk has been a leader in sustainable development with the Ron Joyce Center, and part of our citywide strategy to increase tree canopy cover through the urban forestry plan was to find places on non-public lands, so private property and other institutional properties, where we could have an opportunity to plant trees. Ward 8 happens to have some of the lowest tree canopy coverage in the city. So, following the urban Hamilton, the forestry master plan, trying to identify opportunities. We've done this with both the school boards, with a really well-received program for trees to be planted on school board lands. We've prioritized planting in public spaces, of course, and Mohawk College is very graciously wants to also help contribute to increasing the tree canopy coverage in Hamilton and through a partnership with the city Hamilton. And just in case it comes up, as it has come up before, trees are a public asset. They are infrastructure, and there is a true defined benefit to the community for planting trees. And I'm very happy to work with Mohawk and get more trees planted in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Danko. We will go to the vote on this motion. And that carries 14-0. Moving on to 12.2, Victoria Park Combination Drinking Fountain / Water Bottle Fill Station in Ward 1. Councillor Maureen Wilson, please introduce your motion. And do you have a seconder?
No, I don't. I'm trolling.
I can, I'll just keep seconding them. Councillor Nan will second your motion.
Thank you. This is for a combination of drinking fountain water bottle fill station at Victoria Park from the Ward 1 capital discretionary account to an upset limit of $3,500, and also from the Hamilton Water Efficiency Capital Project at an upset limit not to exceed $20,000, and B, that the general manager of Public Works or designate be authorized and directed to execute any required agreement and ancillary documents with such terms and conditions in a form satisfactory to the city solicitor. This is an intentional investment share of a water fountain, largely to service children, but also keeping in mind guardians, because when you are with small children, you need to keep your eyes on them all the time. And the present fountain is much older, and it's not in keeping where children are going to be. This is also part of our continued investment in public spaces. In Ward 1, Victoria Park is an amazing, amazing park, and we're providing for, from Ward 1 discretionary dollars, a new spray pad, new sun shelter. The year before, it was a new investment of play equipment that met children who have certain accessibility needs. It's also going to be receiving, or it has already been earmarked, $500,000 for the tennis club, even though we know there are people who come outside of Strathcona to play, because when we all play, we're all happier and healthier. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor, and we'll go to the vote. That carries 14-0. Moving on, 12.3, improvements to Eleanor Park, 80 Presidio Drive, Hamilton, Ward 6. Councillor Jackson, please introduce your motion and your seconder.
Chair Spatafora, I will. Moved by myself, and I must say seconded by a most enthusiastic Ward 2 Councillor Cameron Kretsch. It jumped off his email in quick response to my email. Improvements to Eleanor Park, 80 Presidio Drive. Whereas Eleanor Park experiences drainage issues due to existing conditions, historical design solutions that have been exacerbated by changing weather conditions and patterns, whereas a stormwater review and design solution by a qualified professional are needed to address the issues of moving stormwater through and from the park to ensure appropriate drainage of all our city park assets, and whereas additional funding is required to support this engineered design solution, and whereas any unallocated funding from this motion may be used towards the implementation of the drainage improvements as well, therefore be resolved A, the funding be provided to support the engagement of a consultant to review the existing drainage of the parkland and provide a design solution to address parkland stormwater for Eleanor Park at that address to be funded from my Ward 6 Capital Reinvestment Reserve account number listed at an upset limit, including contingency not to exceed hopefully $125,000, and B, the GM of Public Works or designate be authorized, directed to approve, execute any and all required agreements, ancillary documents in a form satisfactory to city solicitor related to stormwater review and design at Eleanor Park. And if I might just quickly, Chair Spatafora, comment. First of all, I want to thank Elsie McIntosh always for her guidance in helping me with the language of the motion, and Senior Project Analyst Andrea McDonald, Manager Kara Bunn, and Director Cynthia Graham for their support. Chair Spatafora, you may recall last year we had a wonderful reopening at Eleanor Park, primarily to dedicate the new climber and playground in memory of little Jude Strickland at Eleanor Park. Brand new pathway, a lot of other new amenities. Had a crowd of 300 at the opening last summer. And unfortunately, what's occurred since then and through this past winter season and some heavy rainfalls is abutting the homeowners along Erica Crescent at the south part of the park and along some sections of the pathway. For some unknown reason, there seems to be some additional ponding that has occurred, of course, making things unsafe and more challenging for park users. And so I thought, instead of letting this go on another year or two, hoping the drainage may resolve itself, in talking to Director Graham and Manager Bunn, we decided this was the best way to go, and hence the money coming out of my ward budget, not impacting any other ward budgets. And once again, seconded by the Ward 2 Councillor Cameron Kretsch. Thank you, Chair Spatafora.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson, and we'll move to the vote. And that carries 14-0. Thank you. 12.4, Parks Accessible Portable Toilets, Ward 2. Councillor Crutch, please introduce your motion and your seconder.
Hi, Councillor Huang is my seconder, but thank you, Councillor Pauls, for offering the second. This was inspired in part by Councillor Pauls's somewhat related motion for some events that were taking place. And this is an attempt to see, for especially this season that we're talking about, and the season we're talking about goes to like the fall, how this might work to supplement some washrooms in the core. I've heard about this just relentlessly for many years, even before I was elected, about there not being enough washroom spaces downtown. So now that we have a different contractor, now that we have piloted this essentially in a sort of way in Woodlands Park, this can be some temporary city infrastructure to allow for there to be some washrooms in a series of Ward 2 parks. And then I'll work those out with Director Graham about where those can go, because right now it's a bit tricky to figure out what parts of parks need that the most. And then at the end of the season, hopefully either we're going to renew this for the winter season, or we're going to be able to look at where we see data for usage, right? So we can talk to the company about where are you seeing a lot of usage for these things, and that gives us information about where to actually put permanent washrooms downtown. So, which is very important, because right now we're going through that process of saying, well, maybe there should be one at Ferguson Station, maybe there should be one over here. This gives us a bit of preliminary data from which to make those decisions, because we only have so many dollars to put permanent washrooms in our public spaces in our core. So that's the essential point of it. You have the motion in front of you. I think we're not going to end up spending the $25,000, but we want to have that cap there, because I think it's about $1,500 or so per each one. And as you know, there are a lot of Ward 2 parks. So I'll leave that there for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wang seconding. Let's go to the vote. That carries 14-0. Thank you. We have 2 notices of motions. Are they both staying as notices today? Perfect. 13.1, Councillor Crutch, please introduce your notice of motion.
Just briefly say this is the motion I promised I'd bring forward with respect to it's called the Strawn Open Space or the Strawn Street Linear Park Space, whichever, about starting to program that. And staff already have the capability of doing a lot of this from a funding perspective internally with the things that are needed, like some park benches, garbage cans, signage, those kinds of things. So the motion will come forward actually in 2 weeks, and as an actual motion, but the idea is to start programming this space. So as a pilot before we actually have consultation with the neighborhood, and then actually put some amenities in there. And I'll speak to this more excitedly and in more detail in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Councillor. 13.2, fencing installation for Gage Park community. Councillor Nan.
Thank you. It's pretty self-explanatory, Chair, in the name of the motion. But essentially, the work that's happening at the Rosedale Tennis Club has enabled us to address the fencing issue around the community garden at Gage Park. I'll speak to it at the next Public Works Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nan. Any other notices of motion before we move on? Perfect. 14, general information. Amendments to the OBL. What do we need here? I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Danko, Councillor Beatty, we good? Thank you. Any discussion on the OBL? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote. Sorry, you want to,
Yeah, I
Councillor?
wanted to say something, but it's not going to impact my vote or the vote in general. I just wanted to make a comment if I could, and I apologize.
On
Yeah,
the
this-
OBL?
On the OBL, yeah.
Go ahead, I'll give you 30 seconds.
Start going.
I'm taking away 4.5 minutes.
I just wanted to draw attention to item number C there. I know I get quite ND that these are motions I put forward last year with respect to no right turns on reds and that analysis being done. And I know partly as due to the cybersecurity incident, this has meant pushing these things back. So we'll see the one about York and James where there was a death last year coming forward in July and then the other in October. So I just wanted to flag that for people, that they know that those two reports are a little bit delayed and will be coming back later this year.
Thank you, Councillor. Back to the vote. Clerk? And that carries 13-0. Thank you. Moving on to private and confidential, 15.1, Stage 3, Phase 2, Glanbrook Landfill Construction, confidential PW 23079A, LS 24015, citywide. May I please have a mover and seconder to move into closed section respecting item 15.1 pursuant to section 9.3, subsection E and F of the city's procedural bylaw 21021 as amended, and section 2392, subsection E and F of the Ontario Municipal Act 2001 as amended, as the subject matter pertains to litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the city or a local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communication necessary for that purpose. We will require an electronic vote. I don't have a mover and seconder. Councillor Pauls, Councillor Wilson? Sure. We can, okay, we have a mover and a seconder. Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Happy to move into close to discuss this information report if anyone on the committee wants to. Just wanted to float the idea that if it's an information report and we've read it, like if there's not, like again, if there's questions in the room, very happy to do it. Just wanted to, it's an information report.
I'm with you, Vice Chair, but we'll look around the room. Is there anybody that feels we need to go in? You can go in. It's not like we're saying we can't. It's completely up to committee. So is there anybody that, yes, we have thumbs up on the screen, so we will go in. So Councillor Pauls, seconded by Councillor Alex Wilson? Yes. Yeah, they want to go in. Councillor Tadison, you'd like to go into? Oh, he does not want to go in. Okay, so we have people that do and people that don't. So we need to make a decision here, people. We're going to go to the vote, and if you don't want to go into private and confidential, vote no. And if we defeat the motion, okay, well, who wants to go in? The ward councillor does not, so I would like to follow the ward councillor's lead. But Councillor Tadison, do you want to go in? Yes or no? And then I'll go to everyone else. If there's one other person after you, then we'll go in. You have to unmute yourself, Councillor. Or you can give me a thumbs down.
Okay, am I unmuted?
Am
I unmuted? Okay. If no one else needs to go in, I'm cool. But if someone wants to go in, I'll support them.
Okay, so Councillor Jackson, you're waving me off around this side of the horseshoe. You good? This side of the horseshoe? Then we don't have to go in. Perfect. So we don't need a mover and a seconder. So we'll use the same mover and seconder, Councillor Pauls, Councillor Wilson, to keep accept the report and keep it confidential. And we'll bring that vote up. That carries 13-0. Thank you. Moving on to item 16, adjournment. Councillor Cassar? Councillor Pauls? All right, let's vote. Councillor McMeekin says he's done. Thumbs up from Councillor McMeekin, thumbs up from myself, thumbs up from Councillor Alex Wilson. And we're adjourned 13-0. Thank you, clerks. Thank you, staff. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.